Welcome to another episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In, recorded on March the 5th, 2025. I'm your host, Robert Swarthout, and I'm joined by my co-host, Andres Sandate. How's it going, Andres?
Hey, Robert. Good. I'm mobile today, so hopefully you can see and hear me okay, everybody listening and watching. But man, whether I was sitting behind a desk or on the run, talk about a crazy week it's been.
Crazy, in some sense, is a major understatement. I don't know why I'm surprised, but crypto is continuously surprising me these days with how volatile it is, or just kind of the news cycle and how quick and kind of, in some sense, off cycle it can be. We'll talk about something that happened at 10:30 on a Sunday morning. There's not many major market news things that happen at 10:30 on Sundays, but in crypto, that is apparently not off limits. So let's jump in here. Our first topic, just generally volatility. The last week has been pretty intense. If you measure it from just like looking at Bitcoin started the week Sunday the 23rd, and then finishing March the 2nd at 94,000 in both ends. But it was also down and rallied 20% in the middle of that. It's just crazy numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big announcement Sunday that you referred to, I was in Florida with my family, and we were at Disney, or maybe in between going to another event in Miami on Sunday, and this announcement comes out across, X or Twitter or Truth Social that, President Trump announced formation of a strategic, crypto reserve, which is our second headline, but that quickly was led by a follow-up around what was going to be in the reserve. So that added to what was already a pretty volatile week, announcing that on Sunday, just added to additional, hype and support. And then, Monday whipsawed back down.
Right. Yeah, and that's really just following the broader market, just the topic or the conversation around tariffs. But I kind of zoomed out a little bit and found someone that had done a little bit of research on, in our last bull market cycles, kind of what have been some drawdowns that Bitcoin has experienced. And I mean, this is kind of like right on par. If anything, it's on the smaller side of drawdowns. There was a drawdown in 2021 of 55%. This was just at 20%. You've had some 25s, 37, different numbers. So, crypto is volatile. I think everyone already knows that, but it's just kind of crazy to kind of see how it shakes out sometimes, and how quickly it can happen. I mean, normally it's not within a week's time span. You make a round trip, but this one seems to be there. And if you're really asking my opinion, it feels like those that quote unquote control the market, in air quotes there, they are trying to bleed people out and get them just to be disinterested. It feels like we're preparing for next leg up. Again, I don't know as much of a projection there. That's just the way it feels right now. It's super boring price action, followed by some down, then back up, and then it's just you feel like you're kind of treading water of sorts.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this last Friday in our weekly crypto update, that the market, the equity market, the prior 6-7 Fridays, the Friday session, it was a risk-off day. And so you had a lot of positions that were exited, and you saw pricing and or, stocks basically have down days on Fridays. Well, this particular Friday, a couple of days ago, the market was up, and a lot of it is, like you said, fed by what is our trade policy going to be, tariffs, are we doing tariffs, are we not? And that continues today. So I think as we continue to see how things shake out from an economic standpoint with respect to tariffs, the market's got a lot to digest, and crypto is in some sense along for the ride, and in other sense, you throw in announcements like, number 2, and it just adds additional, things to the stomach that have to be digested.
Right. And it depends, I guess we can just jump into number two here. So, it's 10:30 Sunday morning, Trump tweeted that he was directing, his administration to set up a crypto reserve that was consisted of XRP, Solana, and ADA. That was the first tweet he put on message he put on Truth Social. It was void of Bitcoin or Ethereum. So it's like, okay, is this only going to be an altcoin thing? It was kind of confusing, exciting, kind of weird. It's like that wasn't the narrative the entire time. And then I think roughly in 30 minutes to an hour later, he followed up and saying, oh, and I also love Bitcoin and Ethereum a lot, and they will be included as well. Okay, so you have a basket of 5. So now you're back to this world where essentially the Bitcoin maximalists, the ones that only want Bitcoin to be in a reserve, think everything else is like trash and shouldn't be there. And why would the government ever invest in trash? Bitcoin's, pure in their mind. It is the true definition of maximalism. And it just kind of started that infighting again. There's a lot of questions still in the air. Like, is the government truly going to do this? I think that's the first big question. And assuming it does, how are they going to acquire these? The government does hold a decent amount of Bitcoin from seizures of different crimes. Not as much Ethereum or any of these really in meaningful ways the other ones. So it's like, are they going to go out in the open market and buy it, or just how it's all going to shake out? So, which we will get to in our third topic here, the crypto summit. I think we start to get some answers here this Friday about this kind of stuff. But it's a wild, wild west out there in crypto land when it comes to a president tweeting about this stuff on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we brought this up maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. The tweet that I referenced in that show was the idea somebody had offered up was, this is becoming more and more of a centralized game. And, the folks that have lobbying and that have influence and that have the ear of, Eric Trump or President Trump or both are the ones that are going to prevail, and the ones that don't are going to be, somewhat left behind. I mean, I'm kind of, I'm sort of conjecture a little bit, but I think that second tweet is an example of, right, somebody rushed in and said, wait, you got to include an announcement here because you're leaving behind all these people that have all this Bitcoin, including, right, don't forget, like, the asset managers that have launched, Bitcoin ETFs. Like, what are we supposed to do there? So it's a little bit of, you're flying the jet, if you will, like midair, and, trying to see, like, did we, check the wheels? I'm not making light of this because this is, people's livelihoods, and there's jobs, and there's, a lot of money and a lot of, smart people like tied in. But I went back and looked to see, like, who is this Bitcoin maximalist? Like, who are these folks, right? And then you don't have to look very hard out there in, on X to see, like, okay, the Winklevoss twins, right? They come out and say a lot of these things do not meet the standard of what, Bitcoin does, which is, from their perspective, Bitcoin is effectively digital gold. It's got utility. That's its utility. It's an inflationary currency or inflationary security, and everything else doesn't meet it yet until you can offer up, like, a practical use case. So again, I think it's, for me, my takeaway on all this is, I just want to put, like, something real behind the headline or behind the tweet. I want to get to the second and third and fourth layer. So what is your background? Why do you have that position? What are you promoting? What's your agenda? And then try to make sense of it, right? For myself. Like, that's just how I kind of think about it.
Yeah, and I think you're right there. I mean, it's, in some ways, it's just kind of fascinating to stand back and watch, like, the Bitcoin crowd is so defensive of this reserve, partially because I feel like this is like their last hill to stand and die on, and fight for, because their likelihood to have utility outside of any sort of, like, digital gold narrative is just basically zero. So, like, they're really defensive of this topic. Whereas some of these other altcoins, yes, they would likely love to be in the reserve, but at the end of the day, they're after a much bigger prize, in my opinion, trying to get utility and real usage of it. That will drive the price of these more so than a reserve inclusion. So
Right.
It's pretty.
Yeah, I mean, it's
pretty
news
interesting.
that it's definitely news that is going to continue to create headlines, right? So we don't
Mhm.
have answers, therefore our listeners don't have, right, a whole lot, new from us. But I mean, our role here is to try to take the headlines, offer a little bit of perspective. Again, we don't own Bitcoin, but I
Mhm.
think that the idea is it was a tweet. It got a lot of traction. The market reacted. We're going to see what is next, right? We'll get some
Yep.
more answers, hopefully, like you said, leading into our third headline.
Yep.
Friday, a couple days from today, this 7th,
Mhm.
is going to be this big crypto summit
Mhm.
in DC, right? So you
Yep.
had David Sachs announced as the crypto czar for President Trump's transition / White House.
Mhm.
And instead of having a task force go out there and sort of do their research, get information, get insights, and come back to the president and or the working group with answers, instead they did what?
They
Announced a
they're
summit.
playing a bit of catch up because the president kind of either they already knew what they were going to do, or he basically told them what they're going to do this last Sunday. One of the two.
Yeah. So
Um,
do you have any insight on this summit? Like, where's it being held? Who got it?
yeah,
Who got a ticket? Like, how are they going to go about like using 8 or 10 hours, in DC
yeah,
besides the photo op at the end? Like, how are they going to actually get to work? And what do you expect to comes out of this summit?
yeah. What I will get to that. One quick thing I want to say about this whole crypto reserve piece, at least the news cycle around it. So that was Sunday morning at 10:30. What I found really interesting is on Twitter, you started seeing rumblings that something was going to happen with regards to Bitcoin and Ethereum. People thought because around 7:30 Saturday evening, so call it 15 hours prior, a crypto trader took $4 million of capital and went 50x long leverage on those two, and basically turned 4 million into 10.5 million after the news cycle and closed it out. So there was some insider trading here. In crypto, that is technically not illegal right now, but it's just this stuff being on the blockchain and a lot of this data being a little bit more out in the open than it might be in private market or in traditional markets was sad to see, but also entertaining. I guess good on this
Right.
person for taking advantage of something that's technically not illegal.
Yeah.
So
So they went
anyway,
out, bought, basically made a derivative or options trade saying,
yes.
I'm thinking Ethereum and XYZ like Bitcoin are ultimately going to be included.
It wasn't necessarily even a bet about being the reserve. It was just they went 50x long leverage on Bitcoin and Ethereum
Yeah.
for a total of $4 million. So basically a $200 million position,
Yeah.
and they knew the right time to put that on, and they knew the right
Yeah.
time to take off. And those are the two most important pieces.
Well,
So
it'd be fascinating 60-minute story or whoever could do that
yeah.
piece on who's that individual, who's behind them, where they get the news, where they tipped off. But yeah, we would
Yeah.
be we'd be in conspiracy land real quick, and we've got headlines to cover. So
Yes. So
more to
we'll move
come
on.
on the crypto reserve. A lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah. So we'll jumping back to the summit here before we
Yeah.
get way off track. So the crypto summit, as you mentioned, is happening Friday. It's happening in DC. It's a rather small group, is my understanding. It sounds like a dozen or so invites have gone out or are going out. Seems like kind of late for an invite to go out, but I know as of yesterday morning, like essentially, or maybe it was Monday evening, none of them had gone out. So it's kind of a bit of a last minute, I guess, invite list. So that's going out. And then after they have their summit, whatever that means, I think it's a number of hours, I don't think it's a full day. There's apparently a gathering across the street, is the way I've heard it described, which is with a much bigger group being allowed to come. But it's part of what we are hoping comes out of the summit is details around this reserve, kind of is it going to be market cap weighted? Is it going to be equal weighted? Like how are they going to decide what the ratios are? So you have that, and just generally like how are they going to acquire these? There was Howard Lutnick made a comment that I found pretty fascinating. My first gut reaction, I'll share in a second, but his point was Bitcoin is unique. The other crypto tokens will be treated differently, positively, but differently. Okay, you can take that all sorts of different ways. My first gut reaction was, okay, Bitcoin being handled differently means, and how could that be? Well, the government currently holds some Bitcoin as part of the stuff they've seized. So maybe that's the differently part, and that means the other ones they have to go and buy, or I don't know. Hopefully, we get some news on the 7th, and don't have to wait till the following week to get any sort of, I guess.
I'm just, yeah, I guess, for me, like one of the big questions is like 2 weeks ago, we were talking about this task force and summit. If you go back to, even a week ago almost, but like certainly leading up to the election in November, and this is not me harping on, the administration or Trump. This is just me as an optimist looking for, momentum around legislation, momentum around stablecoin bill, momentum around like a framework. And yes, there's been a lot of things that have happened in terms of cases, and we'll talk about that later in the conversation around the SEC and a lot of stuff that's been dropped as far as lawsuits. But what I was really optimistic is that, going into the end of the first quarter, again, things take time. We'll see. But I was optimistic that these summits and this task force was going to be like out there really meeting with legislators and trying to present, legislation and, help us get regulation. Now I feel like the whole community, the whole industry is fighting over winners and losers and who's going to get, to feed at the trough, if you will. And
right.
I just, it's going to create a lot of infighting in an industry that is still trying to grasp with and digest, honestly, like the latest hack that happened, 2 weeks ago.
10 days ago.
People got made whole, but it's like, how quickly the ball, moved and our attention shifted. But it is the nature of our industry, and it is the nature of crypto today. So yeah, I would be shocked if they came out and said something at the presser that, we spent 3 hours talking about stable coins. Nobody wants to hear that at this point.
No.
Like that's yesterday, and that's boring, and that's lawmaking. Everybody wants to hear about like this reserve and what's going to happen, who's in, who's out, how do you get in, how's it work, and it's I don't know. There's a part of me that's a little bit frustrated and disappointed in that.
Yeah, and listen, I'm totally with you. And the part that I wouldn't say makes me nervous about this reserve, but it puts me on edge a little bit is say it goes forward with these 5 assets they talk about. Okay, there's probably some other U.S. based reserve assets that probably should be included, but like, what is the threshold to be included? Okay, we'll get that defined. But if all these are just really around an executive order, in 4 years from now, we could have a different president thinking very differently about crypto and all of a sudden change it all. Like, it needs to be codified in law if we're really going to do this. So it's harder for it to be at the whim of a political wind, in my opinion. So we have a lot of work to do.
Well, think about it this way. I think about it this way. This is how I get my head around it. If I'm the oil and gas industry, right, and presidents come and go, 4 years, 8 years, whatever, come back into office now with President Trump coming back in for a second term. If you stake your company and the future of your business and the decades-long capital requirements and outlays in that business, like you don't just go, put $1 million in the ground in an offshore rig and then, you go do it again somewhere, like multi-decade long kind of investments that involve governments and that involve geopolitical issues and honestly are much bigger than a 4-year, 8-year term. And so I think crypto has to start thinking like that. I think crypto has to start thinking about, like, to your point, Robert, like, okay, so what if we were part of this? Are we going to bet our whole company and our whole future around being included? Or are we going to therefore pack up if we're not included? I just think this is going to tell us as an industry and people that follow this space or invest in this space, is going to tell us a lot over the next, 3 to 6, 9, 12 months, however long it takes to say, is this another idea and there's not a lot of execution? Or if you are not included, does that mean, you're not anointed and therefore, pack up your bags and, go overseas? I don't know, but a lot of questions.
Yeah. And, I guess to that point, we're getting a few answers right now that are creating more questions than they're answering.
Sure.
So
Uncertainty.
It's not fun.
Well, we'll report next week on what we learned from the summit, because obviously there's going to be something that comes out of it. So
one would hope. So our next topic here is the rescinding or the upcoming rescission of the broker dealer rule, which is was a big deal for crypto.
Yeah.
So this is being sponsored and supported by Ted Cruz and Representative Mike Carey. But basically, 11th hour attack on crypto that happened at the end of the Biden administration, trying to make it hard for basically just crypto to exist because the reporting rules around that didn't really match the technology. And people that were wallet software providers were all of a sudden thinking they were going to have to report to the Treasury, which seemed kind of crazy. So this is in some ways just more of the cleanup that's happening. We're going to talk about the SEC next. They're cleaning up their side. There's this, the tide is going out from all this. I guess again in the war that happened over the last 4 years against this industry.
Yeah.
So.
And the thing about this headline is it's like, look at us. It's our fourth headline, right? And yet, if we'd looked at this headline 3 months ago, it would have been the top headline had it happened alone without everything else going on. So I think, I guess the takeaway and the punchline for me on this is, don't forget to read, page 2 of the news. Don't forget to read page 3, because a lot of this stuff has huge ramifications.
Right.
As an industry, gets its footing, and becomes more and more like a part of our daily financial lives. So yeah, big deal.
The part that I liked about this one, just the way how it came about, was not necessarily the topic, but this was a topic that dealt with crypto, and it was a tweet by David Sachs, the crypto czar, saying this bill's coming and this is why it's important, and the White House supports it. Like totally the way that you would want to see this news come out. You don't see it leaking out, and some person saying, "No, I think this is coming." Like this was in some ways handled far better than Trump's Sunday morning tweet about a reserve, because that tweet obviously wasn't thought out because it was missing some of the assets, the initial one at least. So, anyways, I don't think we have time to talk about here.
I think you're absolutely point well taken. I mean, there's a little bit of signaling here, and probably a little bit of there's a little bit of a pipeline, a lead in, and some groundwork that was laid. I mean, obviously, crypto's experienced the meme coins between President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump. That was, whipsaw. Then you get the whipsaw tweet, right? So, I mean, it's just buckle up and strap it in, strap it on, whatever you want to call it, because, we are, I think, as an economy in general, just in for a period of what was true a year ago or what was true for decades may not be true tomorrow. And that's a maxim 100%. That we should all certainly invest by and live by for a period of time as far as our portfolios are concerned.
Yep. Agreed. So moving on, our next topic is just kind of following up on what we talked about last week and the week before, but the SEC continues to drop cases, sometimes drop, sometimes rescind, sometimes just decide not to move forward with because they weren't even truly cases yet. They were just more of a Wells notice. In this case, they dropped their Kraken case with prejudice, so they can't bring it back, which seems to be the method that is happening here. Most of them are prejudice, which is more telling than anything else. It's like, okay, we really screwed up here. We're sorry. And we're saying we never can do this again. Obviously, if you break the law, we're going to talk to you. But in these cases, they weren't breaking the law. They were also had a case against Hex, is a crypto token, against the founder of that. They've dropped that case. That was interesting to me because I actually thought there was fraud in that case. Either they decided it wasn't worth the battle or there truly wasn't fraud. And then the other one that I will mention here is Consensus. That's the company that sits outside of Ethereum that basically is the big promoter of Ethereum that Joe Lubin, one of the founders of Ethereum, owns and runs. So, a big cleanup. Again, the one that everyone is still waiting for is the Ripple case. And from the things I've seen, it looks like it's not going to be this week or next week. It's probably going to be an April timeframe type situation, because it sounds like behind the scenes, potentially Ripple is fighting to have a lot of the stuff unwound that was in that. So they're pushing harder and potentially asking the court to make a decision on it versus the SEC. So we'll see. I think that you see, obviously XRP would probably move when that news comes, but more specific, I think the market kind of gets a better reaction when they know that one is out of the way, because that was the big one, the one that had gone the furthest and also had a judgment. So,
yeah. Well, you're so dialed in on the XRP Ripple story. I'm a baseball guy, baseball coach, baseball fan, and so I'm gonna equate the Ripple SEC to Pete Rose, right? He's back in the
Yeah.
news, the late Pete
Yeah.
Rose. This is the Pete Rose judgment, right? Like, does he ultimately get into the Hall of Fame? Does he ultimately, have his lifetime ban rescinded? There's a lot of people, including President Trump, who announced that yes, he should be in the Hall of Fame. As a baseball guy, this is that's a case you're paying attention to, right? Because
Yeah.
Cooperstown and being in the Hall of Fame, they're totally different. They're totally different issues, but in a way, the whole industry is kind of waiting to see what happens with Ripple, what happens with that case. We've talked about it for years. A lot of people have paid attention to it. So yeah, I think we're going to find out this year on both of them.
That would be crazy. I've followed the Pete Rose thing a little bit, but not nearly as much as you have. So that'll be
Well, here's the one thing I'll
cool to
say
see.
about President Trump. If you like him or you don't like him, politics aside, he's going to bring the issue to the forefront, and there's going to be a decision, right?
Right.
We're going to get a decision on Pete Rose, and we're going to get a decision on Ripple. People may not like what they hear and answer, but there's going to be, there's going to be a decision. So,
yeah, very, very much indeed. So next topic, staying with the SEC, is they gave guidance on meme coins. We'll just step back here.
Yeah.
The SEC giving guidance on anything? We haven't said those words for 4 years.
Crazy. Yeah. This is real. This is not a fake podcast.
And this is not the first thing that I would have thought they would give guidance on. But this starts to overlap in Trump launching his meme coin, the Trump token, Melania token, and just all the other things that have happened in the last 2.5 months.
Of course. Yeah. Absolutely.
But the SEC came out and basically likened them to be collectibles, not securities. So the SEC is basically washing their hands of it and saying, okay, good luck. As part of their letter that they wrote, they said meme coins also typically have limited or no use or functionality. So they're basically saying these are, in crypto terms, shit coins, and we don't have anything to do with it. So it's
right.
I think everyone agrees with this, but to see the SEC do this was a little bit entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's the jaded side of me that could react and give my opinions, and then there's the news side of me and the sort of be objective, right? Like, people join our show and listen, hopefully, to get reaction to news headlines. I think what this does do is it does give clarification to people out there who are investing in meme coins, thinking that they are going to get information, they're going to get financials, they're going to get all this stuff that a security is kind of expected to provide, or at least disclosures. They ain't getting that shit. Mm-hmm. They're not going to get it. The sponsor's not required to provide it. So literally, it's a clarifying point, buyer beware. You may, and in history repeats itself regarding many of these coins, the bottom could fall out.
Yeah,
and likely will. Think is helpful. That is likely helpful because I'm studying and doing the CFP program right now, and they talk about collectibles, they talk about art, they talk about all these things in the same breath that they talk about stocks and bonds. And so I'm like, are we revising the material here and going to be talking about meme coins, alongside all this other stuff? That's the reality. The other part of me is just the jaded side is this just gives air cover to all those people who wanted to go after Trump for the meme coins, and now you can't, right? You can't, because they're not securities, right? So it's complex. It's more than just a headline, but I do think it does provide, sort of a black and white issue, a lot more clarity than we got, 2 months ago.
Agreed. So
I'm fascinated about this one, though. Eric Trump telegraphing the next move. So tell me more.
Yes. So Eric Trump tweeted on the February the 25th, he said, buy the dips. And the B for buys was the Bitcoin B. So the market was quite down that week. Last week, we've talked about this. It was down 20%. That was near the lows for the week. So he said, buy the dips. Somebody replied to that tweet on March the 3rd, so Monday, saying, never fade Eric Trump. And his reply to that was, you're welcome, my friend. Hopefully I made someone's life a little bit better. Wow. Now my advice, hold long term. So it's
way. Oh my.
Yes. Again, we don't have insider trading laws in crypto, but boy, does this smell of he is talking to his dad, or he has some kind of in somewhere. It's not a good look for crypto. This is not a good look.
Yeah, my reaction to that, Robert, is what they say about, I think it was Buffett or Munger, that said, when you see it regarding certain types of magazines and certain video,
Mhm.
it when you see it. Like
Yeah.
that's what this is. I mean, come on, like let's not
Mhm.
be naive. Again, not breaking the law,
Right.
but doesn't necessarily mean it's a good look for the industry and a good look for legitimizing, I guess, in a sense, the industry. But let's peel back on the headline itself. So Eric Trump, one of the two sons, well, he's got multiple sons, but one of the older two sons, has he become the crypto, I guess the crypto community's like, this is the whisperer. This is the whisper to the president.
Yes.
Okay.
He uh and he is definitely the one the most plugged in on crypto when it comes to the Suns.
Okay.
Um, Don Jr. will every once in a while tweet about it, but it's more so Eric. Eric is
Yeah.
also, I believe, the one that is leading or the CEO of World Liberty Financial, their crypto startup that they've done.
Okay.
So I don't know. It's for a family that cares so much about brand. You think that this was probably not the best thing to do. That would be like positive for your brand.
Right.
I don't
Right.
know.
Well,
They obviously didn't ask me for brand advice,
Well,
but
he'll be at the crypto summit. He's obviously tied in with what's going on with Sachs. You got to think that they have each other, regularly
mhm,
in communication. President Trump does not like surprises.
right.
Most leaders don't like surprises, right? So there's got to be open lines of communication about what's happening. I mean, the interesting thing about it is this industry moves so quickly. If you're going to have somebody out there representing the family or representing the brand, like they've got to be pretty plugged into what's going on, right? They've got to
Mhm,
be responsive to tweets because things move so quick. So maybe he's the right
right.
person for this particular role. So fascinating stuff.
Yep. So our last topic here was news actually as of this morning. So there's a new nonprofit that is being set up called the National Cryptocurrency Association. They literally are calling NCA out of the gate, and it's just all about educating the public on how crypto could be used and all the things around it. I don't know if it's multiple companies that came together to endow this, but I know that Ripple, at least by themselves, came in and put $50 million of an endowment, and that's quite the stand up of a nonprofit to begin with. Ripple's chief legal officer will be acting as the president of this association. And I don't think that this is just a coincidence that it's happening today. And then there's the crypto summit on Friday. I think that there's definitely at least some dotted lines between these two.
Interesting. The NCA, as you're describing this, I'm thinking is going to be backed by some of the big players in the industry who, the Coinbases of the
Mhm.
world, right? The BlackRocks,
Right.
they want to
Absolutely.
provide education to further legitimize this and help the public, right? Get up to speed on it.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah.
But I didn't check the last hour before we started recording here, but there was not tons of news around it, but some news. And the dotted line there is Brad Garlinghouse has said he will be in DC this week. I don't think it's just for this. My guess would be it is for that summit that we will hopefully be getting news from on Friday. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well,
Really, really
thank
fascinating stuff. Well, I'm going to say it here first live on our podcast that I am filing today the NAIA. It's a new association. It's going to be called the National Alternative Investment Association. And I am looking for my first $50 million sponsor.
that's wise. You should get out of the gate and get ahead of everyone else wanting to do that.
Got to get ahead of everybody. Everybody wants to be in alts and private markets, and we need an
Yeah.
association for it. So let's go.
Awesome.
Well, man, what a week! What a week of headlines. I can't wait to see what comes out of the summit on Friday. This is going to be a fun, crypto update every week because whether we liked it or not, I did feel like we droned on last year and had to because we couldn't get any development around, what was the Biden administration's posture? We're going to get any closure? Was the SEC going to ever do anything, do their job? And man, how much it's changed in a matter of weeks.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us on this episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In. To stay updated on future episodes, you can find us in any podcast player by searching Teton Crypto Capital or the Weekly Crypto Check-In. Take care.
The information presented in this podcast is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, trading, or any other advice. The content provided is general in nature and not tailored to any individual's specific circumstances. Always conduct your own due diligence and consult with a professional financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Cryptocurrency trading involves significant risks, including, but not limited to, the potential for loss of all or a portion of your investment, market volatility, and regulatory uncertainty. The hosts, guests, and producers of this podcast are not responsible for any decisions or actions taken based on the information discussed herein. Cryptocurrency is not legal tender in many jurisdictions and is subject to market risks. Past performance does not guarantee future results. This podcast does not endorse or guarantee any investment outcomes or results. Use of this podcast implies your acceptance of this disclaimer.